Guys, it is all true what all these people say about these Vipassana courses being one of the most significant things that someone can do in their life is true. I am now over 2 weeks removed from taking my 10-day Vipassana course, and I went through so much in that retreat. I feel like I learned so much. I feel like I got so much out of it. There'll be more on that later in this video, but I just feel like a more harmonious and a more balanced life is coming into fruition, and really, like, in continuing to practice, life is just feeling more like an effortless flow. It's the best way I have to describe it, and I can't wait to tell you guys all about it. So why would anyone want to meditate for 10 days nonstop? Why would someone want to spend the short amount of vacation time they get each year simply to sit in silence for nearly half a month? Well, I cannot speak for everyone, but for me, I had heard numerous stories online of people attending these 10-day Vipassana courses and them saying it was one of the most significant things they have ever done in their life. I've heard stories of people overcoming addictions, healing deep buried traumas, and for some even being experientially opened up to a high spiritual path that has the potential to liberate one from all suffering. After all, the primary aim of Vipassana meditation is to retrain the habit pattern of the mind that craves certain sensations while being averse to others. And you don't need to have serious trauma to see how retraining this tendency of the mind can aid immensely in dissolving unhealthy habits and bringing balance to the mind in everyday life. And when I hear people speaking of things this profoundly, I tend to get curious and want to try it for myself. And as for me, I've always had a rather obsessive, jumpy, and impulsive mind. This has caused me to get addicted, or at least develop a dependency to things rather easily. Certain types of foods, video games, weed, and porn are all things I am or have been addicted to in the past. And just the way my mind works, it makes doing deep work difficult. It's hard for me to focus or concentrate for extended periods of time, and I know that in order to actualize my life purpose, some changes need to be made to the structure of my mind, so I foresaw learning Vipassana as a way to jumpstart this change. Of course, I'm also a spiritual seeker who puts the pursuit of truth very high up on my priorities, so even without my desire to change the structure of my mind, I simply seek truth, and I knew going into this that Vipassana is the primary method that the Buddha taught to aid others in their path to enlightenment. And that really is the ultimate aim of all of this, is with Vipassana, is to see the true nature of existence, because the word Vipassana means to see things as they really are. So what this technique entails is observing your bodily sensations from a completely non-judgmental point of view, just being with what is in your direct experience. And it turns out this is way more difficult than it sounds. So I arrived at the retreat center around 3 in the afternoon. Shortly thereafter, we turned in our phone and gadgets, and I was handed the course schedule, which, as you can see on the screen, is quite rigorous and punctual. So from 4:30 in the morning until 9 at night, we are meditating practically the entire day. And throughout the retreat, you are to observe noble silence, which means you cannot talk or make gestures to anyone else there. So, as you can tell by this, the aim is to go deep into this stuff. So shortly thereafter, I was assigned to my room, which happened to be a tent that literally felt like a sauna when I first went inside it. So part of me was excited by embarking on this profound inner journey, but as the beginning of the retreat drew closer, feelings of anxiety in my chest region were increasing in strength. After I got settled into my room, I got a chance to speak to some of the other students before the Noble Silence began, and this calmed me down quite a bit because I realized how similar a lot of us were. A few people I talked to, we were similar in that, we initially had profound insight via a psychedelic experience, and now we were curious about what intensive meditation would be like, but at the same time, also having a number of changes we would like to make to bring more balance and harmony to just our everyday lives. At around 6 in the evening, we were served dinner, which was the only dinner we would eat during our time there, because during the retreat there was no meal served after 11 in the morning, and while everyone was happily chatting away, eating their vegetable stew, I think it was, the battle had already begun for me. So although Vipassana is a completely universal and non-sectarian practice, its roots are in Buddhism, so they do observe a vegetarian diet. And honestly, I cannot recall a day in my life where I did not eat meat in some form. So as I mentioned earlier in this video, one of my addictions or dependencies is on certain types of food. For as long as I can remember, I've always had a strong aversion to a lot of foods. I'm sure some of this is natural, like genetic, but I also had a few experiences as a kid where I was practically forced to eat food I did not want to. So a lot of my life when it comes to food has been defined by clinging to the good sensations of taste while being highly averse to the bad. So I knew in this retreat I would be practicing meditative eating at a lot of the meals, trying my best to observe the sensations as they are in my experience, not to judge or be biased by any preconceived notions of how the food might taste. And it turns out that many of these highly nutritious vegetarian meals actually taste freaking amazing. So even before the retreat officially started, I felt like I was making a lot of progress. After dinner, we all went into the meditation hall, where we watched a discourse on the big screen given by the late S.N. Goenka. He is the guy who essentially formalized the 10-day course format and started to spread Vipassana worldwide, of which there are now 300 plus retreat centers across the entire globe. And he's such a happy, jubilant, fun, and well-spoken guy. He's such an amazing teacher who, just by watching him, you can tell he is in some sort of state of enlightened consciousness. Like the way he talks, it just flows. All the discourses each day were given by him, and the group meditations were guided by him through audio recording. After the discourse on this night, the Noble Silence officially began, and we couldn't talk to anyone, couldn't make any gestures, and then we retired to our rooms. So on day 1, the bell sounded at 4 in the morning, and I was in the chair in my room meditating by 4:30. I quickly became frustrated as I could not go a few minutes meditating without starting to fall asleep. This kept happening, and I actually ended up sleeping for another hour before breakfast began at 6:30. A large part of day 1 was spent trying to find the most comfortable posture for me, because I could not go 10 to 15 minutes without my back hurting or my foot or my leg falling asleep. And this is a very normal thing for new meditators. The pain naturally lessens because you get used to it, but I did finally find the posture that worked for me. I called it the old straddle. Basically, I stacked 3 cushions on top of each other and straddled them. It was definitely difficult on the knees, but it was really easy on the back, which I needed because I just pulled my back a few days prior playing basketball. And most other meditators did use a normal cross-legged pose, but I found out about the old straddle because I saw someone else in the hall using it. And for the entirety of that first day, our task meditatively was to simply observe the breath as it naturally arises. If we noticed our mind wandering away, we were to non-judgmentally bring our attention back to the breath. I had some bouts of very good concentration on this day, but there were also a lot of moments where my mind wandered quite a bit. On days 2 and 3, I had a similar problem as I had on the first day. I was feeling frustrated by my lack of ability to meditate in the mornings due to drowsiness. When I would feel drowsy, I would go take a walk or splash water on my face, and this would wake me up for about only 5 minutes before I would just get drowsy again. My head would be bobbing down, and I'd even sometimes start dreaming while I was awake. It was kind of weird. And it wasn't until the second half of the day on these days where I was able to have deeper meditations. But anyway, in terms of technique, we did continue with the same type of meditation, which we learned was called Anapana meditation, and basically all Anapana meditation is focusing on a certain part of your body and keeping your attention there. But on day 2, we shifted our area of focus from focusing on the breath to, as you can see here on the screen, the triangular region from the top of the nose to the corner of each lip. And on day 3, we're instructed to shrink the area of focus to the region beneath the nose and above the upper lip. In focusing on these areas, our objective was simply to be aware of whatever sensations arise there. The idea is that as we hold focus for longer, we're able to feel subtler and subtler sensations, which is highly necessary in order to practice Vipassana. I remember the discourse given by Goenka on this day as being very insightful, as he discussed a concept known as kalapas. A kalapa, as the Buddha called it, is basically the tiniest particle of sensation that one can feel. It is basically, as I would call it, the atom of direct experience. The idea is that the deeper one goes into meditation, they eventually reach a point where they see that the entirety of their experience is composed of tiny little kalapas blipping in and out of existence trillions and trillions of times per second. And it does take years and years of dedicated practice to reach this point. It's really interesting because it is the same insight that Western scientists have discovered in that all of reality is composed of vibrating waves and that there is nothing truly solid. And when one goes this deep, they realize what the Buddhists call anicca, which is the truth that everything is impermanent and always changing from moment to moment to moment. And because no sensation is permanent, how can you find fulfillment in anything which arises and then immediately passes away? Even the concept of a self, of a you, is just another bundle of ideas and concepts that are also fleeting. The idea is that by directly experiencing this transient nature of reality, the mechanism of the mind that wishes for something to be permanent or to be one way and not another naturally dwindles as a byproduct. And with this, more peace and harmony comes to your life because your happiness is no longer dependent on anything external or anything at all, really. It's more of a internal, deep, blissful state. And with a combination of solid meditations in addition to the informative discourse, I came away from day 3 ready to work hard for the remainder of my time there so I could get as much out of the experience as possible. And on day 4, we finally learned Vipassana. Essentially, Vipassana involves scanning the entirety of your body, feeling and mentally noting the sensations you feel along the way. We would start by focusing on the top of our head for a few moments, and then once we felt sensations there, we would move to the front of the head, down to the forehead, to the rest of the face, and continue downwards until the entire body was scanned, from which we would start again. At the beginning, some areas of my body were virtually devoid of all sensation, and at first this was frustrating as I would hold my concentration at a certain part of my body for what felt like several minutes while feeling nothing. It also became apparent rather quickly to me that Vipassana requires significantly more mental energy than Anapana does. I often found my mind lapsing and wandering, thinking about all the random crap it likes to think about, and I was frustrated by the end of the day. I wanted to be able to focus for longer, but I was determined to improve the next day, and I did. Day 5 was the beginning of the sittings of strong determination, meaning that each of the group meditations we had each day, our goal was to maintain the same posture for the entirety of the hour. I ended up holding posture for the entire hour on the second try. However, by the end of it, my legs were in immense pain and I was not even meditating. I was just wishing for the hour to be over. But on the third sitting of strong determination for that day, I had a profound experience. At first, it was similar to my earlier meditation in which I was in the final 10 minutes of the hour, feeling intense pain in my legs and wishing for the meditation to end. But as I was probing into the sensations in my legs, my mind quieted and the pain just vanished. The sensations were the same, but I just no longer experienced them as pain. It was just neutral. And the rest of the meditation was blissful. I felt elated afterwards. And at the end of the day, I walked out of the meditation hall to one of the most beautiful sunsets I've seen in my life. It's hard to describe this with words, but I felt so close to everything in this moment. It wasn't like I was one with everything, but I just felt so close. Close feels like the best word to use here. I felt connected to the earth, saw all humans, and I just wished peace and harmony to everyone. And as I was walking back to my tent, I heard a group of people laughing at the campsite across the street from the retreat center. And when I heard them laugh, my heart filled with joy and tears came to my eyes. It was like a joy that started like deep in my belly, and it like went up my being, and then tears came out my eyes. And these people across the street continued to laugh, and I just couldn't stop smiling for what felt like around 10 minutes. And in that moment and afterwards, I just felt so in touch with my life purpose. I felt such a strong calling to inspire and invigorate people's spirits, to help them step into greater authenticity, and to just help them find truth within themselves. I was so grateful to be alive. Everything seemed perfect. It was definitely a spiritual high for me. And day 6 was definitely a stark contrast from day 5. I just felt very contracted. I was worrying about petty things, and I was often lost in craving for good food, sex, looking at my phone, any sort of pleasurable stimulation. I had grown attached to that blissful state of day 5, and I was assuming it would continue. It was just the universe giving me a reminder of anicca, that nothing is permanent. And throughout this day, I had a difficult time meditating. I tried my best not to get frustrated by this, and to just like remain aware of the state of my mind without judging it. And I did manage to have a couple very solid meditations near the end of this day, but I wouldn't say I had a better day of meditation than day 5. I don't even like to label it as better or worse. It's all part of the journey, but it was different from day 5 for sure. And on day 7, I would say I had the deepest day of meditation throughout the whole retreat. I was feeling subtler and subtler sensations. I was able to hold concentration for longer than ever before, while maintaining the same posture for over an hour. And my body scans became quicker since I was able to feel sensations easier. In some moments, it felt like I had a free flow of sensations throughout the body with no blank areas. And there were a number of interesting occurrences that took place while in these meditations. My body often felt just wonky, as if my legs were noodles, or as if my body was only 3 feet tall, or as if I was extremely hunched over, even though I was not. Sensations also seemed to blend together. At times I could not tell whether a sensation was on my leg or on my arm, and in one brief moment I even had an experience where I felt as if the outer edge of the right side of my face was actually the center of my face. It felt like I had nothing on the right side of my face and that my entire face was on the left side. It's kind of hard to describe. This was a really strange experience, but experiencing these bodily distortions came when I was in a very deep state, feeling very equanimous and at peace, and cravings would come to my mind, but I would give no reaction to them. And anytime like any thought came to my mind, it would just quickly dissolve because I was so deep in this concentration. And I was really looking forward to keep progressing on days 8 and 9, but I never felt like I had a day that went as deep as day 7. It's pretty interesting how my best days of meditation were followed by some of the worst days. I had a difficult time focusing on days 8 and 9. I kept wondering what my family and friends were doing, what might be going on in the world, and my mind was just filled with creative ideas regarding my business and future videos, and my focus and concentration was still far better than it was at the beginning of the retreat. And I had bursts of very solid concentration here and there, but still a part of me kicked myself for not progressing, and I tried to just remain aware of it and not beat myself up too much. And on day 10, the noble silence was lifted. We still meditated during the scheduled times for group meditation, but other than that, everyone spent the rest of the time chatting. And in talking to other meditators, everyone seemed to have had a major takeaway from the retreat. One guy said he could enjoy the journey more and stop being so fixated on the goal. Others spoke of being able to let go of past romantic partners, and a few were even courageous enough to share their deepest traumas. One guy talked of abuse among members of his family and how he feels inspired to be the light and spark change within his household dynamic. Another woman shared the story of the death of her daughter and how Vipassana had given her the ability to finally be able to think of memories of her without getting depressed. So the notion that a 10-day Vipassana retreat is one of the most significant experiences that one can undergo definitely holds true for a lot of people. As for me, there are definitely a number of takeaways. I see with crystal clarity how practicing Vipassana can help just so immensely with my impulse control, maybe quote-unquote my addictive personality, and just overall not being so fixated on what I label as good sensations, pleasurable sensations, while being averse to the bad ones. already since I've gotten out of the retreat, I noticed my ability to just focus on a task like writing or editing video has just increased like crazy. I'm spending less time on my phone doing mindless stuff, and it just seems that like every day, like I have great starts to my day. I get up, I'm productive, and like I don't get caught in my thoughts too much thinking about, oh, I gotta do all this stuff today, like I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. It's just like a natural sort of like effortless flow that just carries me throughout the day, and like everything just seems to come much more effortlessly now. Not like life is completely easy or anything, but like it's really hard to describe this. Everything just like flows better since I've gotten out of the retreat, which is, it's been over a week now, and it's been freaking amazing to experience that. And perhaps one of the biggest takeaways from this retreat is my inspiration to make radical changes to my diet. So as I mentioned earlier, I had practiced meditative eating at a lot of the meals, and I did this whenever there was a food I had not tried before, I knew I had not liked in the past, and this happened at most of the meals. And what I discovered by just freaking observing the sensations, not judging them, not labeling them, that all of these very nutritious, very healthy vegetarian meals taste so amazing. Some of the meals were like Asian vegetable stir-fry noodles, tofu, tempeh, cazuela verduras, which is a coconut vegetable stew, and honestly, I can't really remember the others, but there were more that I liked. But they were all really healthy meals that I just found so enjoyable. And since then, I've been trying to incorporate some of those more healthy meals back into my life, and I've been eating very well since I've come out of this retreat. It's very nice. And these are just the immediate benefits I see to my life. There are also many more like meta benefits. I can see how going deep into Vipassana, practicing this every day, which I have done since the retreat and plan to continue doing in the future, that one can experience, because at the end of the day, Vipassana is just about learning to be present. It's about being aware of the sensations in your direct experience as they are, and just being content with that. It's not to judge, not to label, not to react, to just be with what is. And one of the most memorable lessons I took away from the Goenka discourses is that as you retrain this habit pattern of the mind, you stop reacting and you start acting. Like you stop reacting to all the cravings and all the aversions that have led you astray and made you miserable your whole life, because if you're blindly reacting, you aren't in control. Your mind's reactions are. And by breaking down this habit pattern of the mind, we can take whatever situation we find ourselves in and truly act from a place of love and compassion rather than this blind, selfish, egoic, reactionary behavior. So Vipassana is a path that I see that one can take as far as they want. I feel more opened up to this high spiritual path than I was before, which is the pursuit of enlightenment. Of course, it takes several years of very, very dedicated practice to get there, but it becomes pretty clear that it is a possibility that one can get there. And since the retreat ended, I have been practicing for 30 minutes in the morning. Ideally, I would like to do more, but life has me working 60 hours a week right now, so I don't have much time to spare. But ultimately, time will tell how far I go down on this path. I've always had issues with following a school of thought and laying down the path for me, and then I go and follow it as if it will lead me to the ultimate truth. I'm not saying this Vipassana Buddhist path is like wrong or anything, but I have gone far enough in my spiritual pursuits to know that one is completely on their own when it comes to discovering truth. No one can ever tell you the truth. There's like no truth found in language by just people telling you things. The truth can only be realized by you in your direct experience, and everything else is just an intellectual game. But luckily, Vipassana is not trying to shove any ideology down your throat. They don't force anything upon you. All they ask is at these retreats is that you give the technique a fair trial, and then afterwards you become your own master again. And if you're planning on attending one of these retreats, know that this is not some retreat where you go off and relax. You must be willing to work hard, like really, really hard. I would recommend a 10-day Vipassana course to any spiritual seeker or anyone interested in improving their life in some way. It really is a profound technique that anyone can benefit from. So if you want to do one of these retreats, head to dhamma.org. You will find a list of all the retreat centers worldwide there. You have to sign up for your desired time about 4 months in advance, maybe even more than that. I think I signed up 5 months in advance. And as far as cost goes, it is completely free, but you're able to make a donation once the course ends. These retreats are run completely by donations, so they don't profit all from this. They just want to spread this profound teaching And knowing that this is run just purely by donations and is completely spread by word of mouth, they don't do any advertising, was pretty much a key reason I made the decision to go, because I know I'm not getting schemed or anything. I know these retreats exist for the sole purpose of spreading Vipassana, of spreading love and truth. And after attending this course, I find it so beautiful that they just want to spread these teachings. They just want people to be more happy and live more harmoniously and more compassionately. It's so beautiful, and this technique can help so much. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. If you want to follow me further or see my other work, check out my Instagram and or my website. I have a blog post on my website that explains this whole Vipassana retreat I just did more in depth than this video. And as always, guys, I hope you have a great day, and peace.